Hi, welcome to TFiR Newsroom, and today we are going to deep dive into the latest release of Tigera's Calico Enterprise, which provides automated observability capabilities that DevOps and SREs can use to quickly troubleshoot issues without compromising on business continuity, which is kind of critical. And to discuss this this announcement, we have with us Amit Gupta, VP of Product Management at Tigera. Amit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Swapnil. Delighted to be part of this conversation.
Let's start with this release, this announcement. Let's give us an overview of Calico Enterprise.
So Calico Enterprise solves for security and observability for your Kubernetes environments. With this latest release of Calico Enterprise, we are providing a full stack observability solution. So whether it's about your layer 3 network observability or your application level performance, your DNS solutions, Calico Enterprise gives a complete visibility for your applications so that you can now troubleshoot any performance issues or any availability issues across the entire stack of your architecture.
If I ask you to kind of just summarize, I mean, you have given a kind of summary, but if I say, if you can just list out the 3 or 5 key features or highlights of this release, what would those be?
Absolutely. So one of the things that often some of the DevOps engineers and SREs struggle with is as their microservices environments evolve and get more complex, they have more than 30, 40, 50 services running inside the cluster, it is extremely hard for them to figure out where the dependency graph is for these applications. So if there is a problem in certain parts of their architecture, it's not very optimal for them to figure out which microservice is creating the problem. So one of the key capabilities for this release is called Dynamic Service Graph. And really what it does is it provides both upstream and downstream dependencies for any application or any microservices running in your clusters. And it's not just the dependency graph, but it also superimposes a lot of Kubernetes context. So whether it's about specific namespaces, your performance metrics. So it makes it really, really easy for DevOps teams to get a full bird's eye view of what's going on in their clusters. Now, in addition to that, we have also added some of the key observability areas like your DNS latency. So it's very hard for users to figure out if an increased latency in the application coming from a poorly designed query in the application or just the latency in the application and the DNS latency has gone up. So we have added capabilities for the DevOps engineers to kind of look at the entire stack and figure out what is the source of latency in their application. There's a lot of layer 7 observability data that has been added into this release. So your application error codes, response codes, all of those capabilities are now available, which is for the DevOps teams and the SREs to be able to see that across right for their applications or in the context of their namespaces. And then last but not the least is if once they do identify where the problem areas are in the application, they can easily and dynamically do packet captures to do further troubleshooting and diagnostics without having to go down to individual nodes or individual applications and running commands from there. So that's a very quick overview of some of the key capabilities in this release.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining that. Now, you folks also have Calico Cloud. How different is Enterprise from Cloud? It could be in terms of either services or features or also capabilities.
Calico Cloud, as you know, Swapnil, is essentially a SaaS service. So it brings all the observability and security capabilities in a SaaS footprint. It's available in a pay-as-you-go model, and it's designed for those folks who want to just bring their Kubernetes clusters, connect it to the service, get started. Now, Calico Enterprise brings the same set of capabilities as Calico Cloud but in a different deployment footprint. So Calico Enterprise is well suited for those deployments where either for business reasons or regulatory reasons, or maybe because the deployment scenario is for edge data centers. For those reasons, if users are not able to use a SaaS service, they can have Calico Enterprise, which is essentially everything running in cluster in a customer's environment. So all the security capabilities, all the observability capabilities that they're running inside the cluster, including all the data set, and it's all operated and managed by the customer.
We are seeing a lot of discussions around SREs, but once again, the same story with DevOps. How would you define, depending on if you're looking at Google's SRE site reliability or versus when you look at SREs, the evolution that is happening, they do a lot of things. So can you kind of explain the importance, the need, the role SREs are playing, because having visibility of, and being able to observe your system, that is critical to business continuity. Without that, it doesn't matter what applications you're running, what stack you are running, without business continuity, without a reliable. So just talk about that. And then we'll talk about, if you look at Calico Enterprise, who is the target audience for it?
So Swapnil, as part of some of our market research, we talked to close to about 100 DevOps engineers and SREs last year. And one of the things that we uncovered and we saw that these SREs, first of all, to answer your first question, the SRE's role is super, super critical in this highly dynamic, highly ephemeral world of microservices and cloud native applications. These are the folks who are responsible for providing an automated infrastructure to run these microservices applications, but at the same time have a full view of what's happening inside the cluster, so that they can keep an eye on the key metrics, key performance metrics for their applications, and the availability SLAs. So absolutely a critical aspect of running and operating your microservices-based infrastructure.
Who would be your target audience for enterprise?
For us, there are two classes of users who are our target audience or who benefit from these capabilities. The one class of users are essentially platform engineers who are building a Kubernetes or cloud native infrastructure platform. They're assembling various different components of their stack, whether it's the underlying orchestrator, storage, network, observability solutions, security, compliance scenarios. So these platform engineers, as they design their platform for consumption by either their own users, and they're designing it for multi-tenancy, high availability, high performance, they'll benefit from that. The second class of users that we see is typically either in a line of business organization, the DevOps teams, the SREs, who are essentially responsible for the full stack, so both the infrastructure and the application. And those folks will also benefit from the capabilities in Calico Enterprise. How
kind of different is Calico Enterprise security, observability, and all these capability as compared to, it's funny to use the word traditional in the context of this cloud technology, but service mesh. I don't see it as a versus. I see it what makes more sense in a particular use case. So can you explain the difference between the capabilities and then what makes sense where?
That's a very good question. So the way we look at this is service mesh, and what we do is a little bit of apples and oranges comparison. So service mesh, obviously, as you mentioned, is gaining popularity among Kubernetes deployments, and it's definitely getting incorporated as a architecture pattern. But at the same time, it is quite complex to deploy, operate, and manage. And that's primarily because, after all, it is another control plane that the ops team would have to manage. So really what Calico Enterprise does from a security and observability capabilities perspective, it provides you both of those capabilities in a common merged solution. So from a security perspective, Calico Enterprise provides capabilities to do both north-south controls and east-west controls. Typically with service mesh, you would largely be able to just do east-west controls. We also provide data in transit encryption capabilities, but more importantly, on top of that, we also provide some advanced security capabilities. So, if let's say your workloads are regulated workloads and you're subject to regulatory compliance like SOC 2, PCI, or whatever frameworks you're subject to, you have requirements to have you have requirements to manage and have visibility inside your workloads, looking for indicators of compromise, some threat detection capabilities. So you get all of those advanced security capabilities from Calico Enterprise. And also for these regulatory frameworks, if you need to plan for some audit and collect evidence data, those capabilities are built into Calico Enterprise. Then from an observability perspective, typically what folks get from service mesh is they would get some layer 7 visibility. They would get some application performance metrics and some dependency charts around that, which is great because I think that's an important aspect of observability. However, the users do miss in that context some of the infrastructure level data point. And I'll use an example here, which is, let's say if there is high CPU usage on a specific worker node, that's going to have impact on applications. Now, if you only have one level of visibility, then it makes it hard for DevOps teams to be able to figure out where the root cause is. Similarly, if let's say all of a sudden your DNS requests are taking an extra 40 milliseconds, that will add to latency in your application. So what we do in Calico Enterprise is we provide a full stack observability solution where across the infrastructure and the application you get all the metrics, logs, and along with all the Kubernetes context. So those are the key use cases where Calico Enterprise compares. Now, just for the sake of completeness, I mean, service mesh is very relevant for connectivity scenarios where you do need to create some circuit breakers, retries, and those are the things that we would not have, and those are the use cases for service mesh.
Tigera has, been in this space for a long time. You yourself, what are some of the pain points when it comes to observability, monitoring, logging? If you're embarking on your cloud native or digital transformation journey, this is a critical piece of your strategy. What are the pain points that are still there? Of course, there is so much there which has still problems to be solved, but what are something that you're like, hey, these are the immediate needs that we still have to address, not only as a company, but as a community and an ecosystem?
There are two levels of key gaps, or what I would say as problems that are still to be addressed by the community. The first aspect is when you look at these cloud native architectures, we're talking about distributed applications running on a distributed infrastructure, orchestrated and managed by a distributed orchestrator like Kubernetes. So in this model, while there is heaps and bounds of log data and metrics that is available for users to be able to make sense out of it, it's very hard for the teams, for the DevOps teams and the SREs to connect the dots, correlate the information with respect to their specific application and the performance they're trying to, or the problem they're trying to troubleshoot. So that's one aspect of an area, the problem that is still needs a lot more attention. The second aspect is really we're just scratching the surface in terms of solving some of these observability pain points. There are a lot of things that could be done around identifying the hotspots, and I'll just speak to some of the security aspects as well, compromises in the clusters. There is room to do a whole bunch of predictive modeling and analytics to alert users on things where things are not normal or there are issues starting to uncover, and also the impact of those issues to rest of your application or deployment footprint. Pinpointing the source or root cause of the problem is also an area that is still developing.
What kind of, I mean, of course, you just announced a release of Calico Enterprise. All the work that you folks do is open source, but what kind of roadmap do you have, not only for enterprise? Of course, cloud is rolling, so there is nothing like as such, but still, if you look at it this year, how does things look like?
So we are committed and we are focused on making sure that the security and observability capabilities evolve so that it is very, very seamless and straightforward for the DevOps and the SRE teams to manage these deployments. We believe security and observability space are going to merge. Today, if we look at various deployments, there's a lot of friction for users to use several bolt-on technology components and agents to just get visibility into how their environments are performing. And if they want to do further analytics and further troubleshooting, it is quite complex. Tigera is squarely focused on addressing those kind of use cases and problems. And our goal is to make sure that we provide a full stack observability solution for these DevOps teams and the SRE teams, where they can they're able to not only detect any performance hotspots, but they're able to troubleshoot very quickly, so that any mean times to resolution, and it reduces the time to recover from any specific issues.
Amit, thank you so much for sitting down here today and talk about not only Calico Enterprise, Calico Cloud, but also in general, the whole evolution of DevOps, SREs, and also the challenges that are there in this observability space. And I look forward to talk to you again. So thank you.
Thank you, Swapnil. Enjoy the conversation.